Hey, so today we're going to talk about what does it take for a person to have a high sex drive or a low sex drive. So if you're dating somebody right now, just started dating somebody, and you can't wait to figure out how good they're going to be in bed, well, this is where you come to talk to science and planets and see, how good they will be in bed. So what makes a person have a really high sex drive? Or what makes a person have a really low sex drive? Well, basically, in an astrological chart, and don't go on your sun sign, that a Scorpio will have a higher sex drive and Leo will have a higher sex drive. No, there are plenty of Leo sun signs who do not, okay? But what determines is their detailed horoscope, okay? So what creates a higher sex drive? In astrology, well, that is the sign of Gemini, Scorpio, and planet Mars, Moon, and Venus, including Rahu. Okay? So if you have a Mars placed in the 12th house, okay? 12th house, 1st house, 5th house, 7th house, and 8th house, these places, and also the 2nd house, these places create a person who is very sexual, especially when Mars is placed in the sign of Mars is placed in the sign of Gemini and Scorpio. Because people think that Scorpio is, represents that sex drive. No, it's actually Gemini. Gemini, original zodiac sign, is man and a woman across each other. You know how that sign is of the twins holding each other? That's actually man and a woman in a union. So Gemini actually represents the union, okay, of two people. Okay, so when Mars energy comes into play in Gemini in these particular houses, that creates a person who is always interested in mating. Okay, Scorpio, obviously we all know Scorpio. It's about the deep passion. But the difference between Scorpio and Gemini is able to experiment with a lot more partners than just one or two. Where Mars with a Scorpio energy creates a person who's very, very, has a very strong and high sex drive, but this person is going to be committed. This person is more about, feeling that passion with that one particular person because they fall so deep in love with them. Where Gemini is about this experimentation, okay? Now, another way to look at the drive of a person is when Mars aspects Venus. Why Venus? Now, Venus is about love. Venus is about those sensual feelings, okay, that little cuddling. Now, when that cuddling gets the energy of Mars, who wants to just take action, to just jump on the bed, that also creates those situations. And let's say if your Venus is placed in the sign of Gemini and Scorpio, that also triggers that. So if Mars is aspecting Venus, and Mars and Venus are in the same house, in these particular signs, it creates that energy, okay? It creates that very passionate energy that, when we are together, when in that passionate moment, anything goes, okay? So this is what shows another way of seeing somebody's drive. The third way of checking somebody's drive is by looking at their 27 constellations, okay? In astrology, there's zodiac signs, and behind zodiac signs, the 12 zodiac signs, there are 27 other constellations working. And not too many people are interested in it because they're like, oh my God, that's so much work for me to go and look at it. No, it's like when you did your first fraction, okay? It was like the most dreadful thing you ever going to learn. But once you learned it, you're like, oh, okay, so 2 over 2 plus 2 over 2, you can easily solve those things, okay? So just like that, when you see that, constellation in the back and you understand what it is, what it's doing to that sign, that also shows. So there are about 4 or 5, different constellations and those constellations obviously are where? In the sign behind working the sign of Gemini and Scorpio, okay? And then also, I forgot to mention, when Mars is delineated in the sign of Cancer, okay, that also triggers this effect, especially if Mars is in the 1st house, 12th house, or 7th house. Why? Because Mars energy, that, Mars is a soldier. Mars is a strong soldier. When a king tells him that, I want you to go there and occupy that land, he does that. But when Mars nature comes into Cancer, he becomes very fickle-minded. That soldier just like, should I do it? Should I not do it? In a way, it's good. He questions it. But Mars energy becomes that weak energy. That if a king tells soldiers that do not see any woman when you go into that village and conquer that land. But because Mars is in Cancer and some hot-looking woman comes to him and starts flirting with him, he's like, well, just this one time, king's not going to know. No one else is going to know. Here I am, out nowhere. Let's just go for it. That's what Mars does. So when Mars is in that sign and, in those particular houses, that creates that energy, especially if Mars is aspecting Venus or Mars is sitting with Venus, okay? So that's another scenario. Now, another way to look at it is when Mercury and Venus come into play. When Mercury and Venus are in conjunction in a sign of Scorpio and Gemini, or in the 3rd house, 5th house, 7th house, and 8th house, that also creates this energy, especially when Rahu is sitting with them, the north node of the moon, because that's the most malefic planet. He wants you to just go out and party. So when the Mercurian nature, okay, and the Venus sensual nature comes in contact with this, this ghetto fabulous thug, hey, you go hang out with a thug, he's pretty much going to show you what thug life is. He's going to show you all the partying and women and drugs and this and that. So that's what happened. So that kind of energy also triggers that extreme passion. So it wouldn't just be like, oh, let's just, maybe I'm good for like twice a week or once a week. But no, these people that I just mentioned to you, they'll be like, hey, forget twice a week. I want it 3 times a day. So that's how you see people's energy. Also the moon. Why moon? Because moon is the mind. So since moon represents the mind, and if that mind is in the 12th house, in the 5th house, 7th house, and 8th house, it creates those feelings, especially in the sign of Gemini and Scorpio. Okay? Why the 12th house though? Why the houses that I mentioned? 12th house in astrology is known as the house of bed pleasures, house of hidden talents, house of, behind the scenes. And pretty much whatever happens, happens behind the scenes, unless you're a porn star. But and 5th house is the house of love and romance. So when there, the energy is very, just powerful sexual energy. That's what happens. 7th house is already a house of mating and sex and marriage and union with the other person. 8th house becomes the original house of Scorpio. Things underground, things hidden from the world, behind the scenes, just like the 12th house. So this is why these houses, come into play. But why Mars does this in the 1st and 2nd house? Because from the 1st house, Mars is aspecting the 7th house, and it's aspecting the 8th house, because Mars looks at the 1st, 4th, 7th, and 8th place from itself. Why the 2nd house? Mars gives that, drive and energy. Because Mars, from its 4th aspect in the 2nd house, is looking at the 5th house. And Mars is looking at this, from its 7th aspect, is looking at the 8th house. So that's why this energy creates. So this is why, don't go on your sun sign. Don't go on your, even your moon sign will not help you in this as much. It'll help you. But if you really want to know that the person that you're about to date, are they going to be good and matching your type of drive, please look at their detailed horoscope. This is why it's very essential to know what real astrology is. Okay? But I'll talk about when person doesn't have any drive in the next video. So subscribe above. Definitely check out the link below for all the secrets of astrology, and check out my videos on my channel. Thank you.